I'm Erica Lynn, and we all know the ocean is the most demanding environment on Earth, consistently testing the reliability and durability of our equipment. When you spend as much time fishing as I do, you know that reliable gear is essential for staying on the water. This is why I went with the Abyss battery to power my trolling motor, electronics, and outboard. The guys at Abyss Battery are rattling the saltwater industry by manufacturing performance marine batteries specifically designed for sonar, outboards, trolling motors, and electronic fishing reels. They're also Bluetooth compatible, so I found checking battery statuses right on your phone while you're out on the water is a huge game changer. To learn more about why Abyss batteries are used by the pros and factory installed by premier boat builders, visit abyssbattery.com.
This episode is brought to you by Hyperice, the leader in advanced warm-up and recovery technology. They have tons of innovative products, like Venom-heated wearables to help soothe sore back muscles, Normatec compression boots to speed up recovery and increase circulation, and Hypervolt massage guns to improve mobility. Loved by athletes like Naomi Osaka and Erling Haaland. Try them yourself. Get 10% off your order with the code MOVE at hyperice.com.
Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together. All right, so I'm sitting here and I'm talking to Austin Adduci, and we are talking fly fishing today. And Austin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name's Austin Adduci. I'm born and raised in Illinois. I've been fishing on the Kankakee River since I got my driver's license. I'm a full-time guide. I've been a full-time guide for the last 8 years. I've started my guide service, Grab Your Fly Charters, back in '08. At that same time, I was a union carpenter. I had a really cool boss. If I had to run a trip, tell him I have to run a trip tomorrow, and he'd give me an address for the next day. So yeah, Kankakee is my home water.
So pretty much when you turned 16, you were fishing it. Did you wade at first, or were you kind of in a boat? What'd you do?
Well, I was a walk and wade guy.
Yeah.
All those known spots in the state park, around Langham Island, Rock Creek, on around Warner Bridge, all those just known walk and wade, easy access spots. That's where I learned. I didn't get a boat until way later. I got older and fatter, and I could run a boat, and went and got my captain's license, and that evolved. My guide career has really taken me to some phenomenal destinations as far as fishing, guiding, working. I'm pretty fortunate.
That's pretty cool. So you and I were talking a little bit right before we started this recording, and you told me kind of funny a little bit about how you actually got your first fly rod. Can you tell everybody that? That's pretty cool.
Sure. I was a smoker, a lot of people back in the day. Marlboro had a smoke pack, saved the points, and I saved up enough points, and there was a catalog full of stuff, and in that catalog full of stuff, there was a fly rod spinning rod combo. That's what I got with my points from smoking cigarettes, and I taught myself how to fly cast in the backyard.
That's pretty cool. So if you had a beginner that's never fly fished before, what are you going to try and explain to them or tell them or to get them? I mean, the only experience I've got is just trying to pull some crappies out of a pond and using the fly rod to get a little extra reach and swing them. So, I mean, that and maybe watching a river runs through it, but that's about it.
What am I going to tell a beginner? It's not as hard as it looks. 1, 2, don't get frustrated. And 3, just have fun with it. A lot of beginners come on the boat and they say, well, I've watched so-and-so's video on YouTube and this guy's video on YouTube and this guy's video on YouTube. That's great. Fly casting is much like a golf swing. Everybody has their own. It's hard to watch and learn how to fly cast from a YouTube video. You really have to go out and practice. The nice thing about learning how to do it learning how to fly fish around here is, it's twofold. You don't need that delicate trout presentation like you do out west. See trout zipping on the surface. You need that real soft, dry fly presentation. You don't need that here. Smallmouth, especially on the Kankakee, where 70% of the season you're fishing in dirty water. Smallmouth like to kill stuff. So the harder that fly slaps down in dirty water, that's just another trigger point for that fish to be like, what just landed? What can I go kill? So you don't need that soft presentation. And then two, you don't need distance like you do in saltwater. You don't need to be able to cast 70 feet to a pot of bonefish. The basic fly cast that I have people do fishing out of the boat day in, day out, maybe 20 feet. And this day and age, technology between rods and lines, it really makes it easy for the beginner to feel that rod load. And when I say feel that rod load, that line to extend behind them to know when to come forward. It's really not as hard as it looks.
So you mean we won't have to sit there with a metronome going and try and get a rhythm or do any of that kind of stuff? Get some practice.
Yeah, there is no 10 and 2.
Okay. So then once you do that, I mean, like, what's the average length, or what kind of rod, are you using for something like that?
Common length rods, or 9 feet long. Unlike the spinning gear world where it's medium, heavy, ultra heavy, fly rods are gauged, rated by numbers. The lower the number, the smaller the fish. The bigger the number, the bigger the fish. So a 12 weight rod, perfect for tarpon. A 2 or 3 weight rod, be perfect for bluegills or crappies. So smallmouth on the Kankakee, somewhere between, depending on time of year, 6 weight to 8 weight rods. That's what you're looking for.
Okay. And then when you're doing that, you guys are, you're launching in the river and using like a drift boat then? And
when I started my guide service, I was primarily strictly on Lake Michigan. I did that for a couple of years, targeting all the migratory species when they came close, and summer smallmouth and carp up against break walls and things like that. After a couple of years of that, having a lot of cancellations due to weather, wind and waves on the south end of the lake, like, if I'm going to give this an honest, hearted try, I need a plan B. I need something else to do. So back then, there was no other drift boats in the area. I bought a boat. I had no idea how to row it. I kind of knew where to put it in and where I could float to. I had a buddy that rowed rafts out in Idaho. When I called him up, I said, "Hey, I need you to teach me how to row." He said, "All right." So we put it in at Bird Park on a really windy, cold, like early April day. And he's like, "All right, you do this, you do that. All right, you good? All right, have at it." So we're supposed to take out at hunting area 9.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's like 12 miles of river. Major headwind all day. Got in a little bit of trouble, and he just sat there, laughed. It was like 14 hours later, we got to area 9, and that was my first experience rowing the Kankakee. That was 11 years ago, 10 years ago. So that has evolved into, yes, I still have a drift boat that I use in the summer when the water's low. But now I also have a jet boat that I use with the high water, like today.
Yeah, that's I've been wanting to get out on the river, and just, with everything being closed the way it has been closed, it's been tough. And now that things are open again and the water got high, I haven't gotten around to it yet. Hopefully maybe this weekend or something, if we don't get too much rain.
Oh, they're calling for snow.
What? I know we were supposed to have a frost, but
I heard Friday. Perfect smallmouth conditions.
Well, okay, maybe I'll try and get out then. But yeah, all right. So, is there anything else that you like? What would you recommend to somebody if they're wanting to get into fly fishing? Go out and buy the greatest, or what kind of equipment should they be having?
This dollar dollar to what I'm getting conversation comes up a lot, and it's a really hard question for somebody like me to answer. That being said, all the fly rod manufacturers out there, really nobody makes a bad rod nowadays. Um, and the beginner, the average angler really isn't going to be able to tell a bad rod from a great rod. So, how much are you going to use it? What can you afford? And kind of aim for middle or top of what you can afford, because you're eventually going to get there. I mean, I started with cheap stuff, and then started to like it and got into it more and more, and moved up to that medium dollar amount, that middle of the road, and then eventually got to the high end stuff. So eventually you're going to get there to the max that you can afford, and start there.
Okay. All right. Is it like any recommendations of actual brands, or just pretty much anything that's
That branding comes into price points. And again, it's really a personal question. I mean, I'm I'm obligated to say Sage. Buy Sage all the way, but I know not everybody can afford Sage.
okay?
Um, so yeah, really, whatever you can afford, that's my safest non-political answer.
All right. Any other recommendations as far as like other equipment that's something that's kind of essential to somebody besides just the rod and the reel?
Take let's talk specifically for the Kankakee. If you're going to pick up or dive into fly fishing this summer on the Kankakee, you need a box of flies, a rod, reel, and line. The Kankakee water is clean enough to where you can wet wade all summer. It's actually quite refreshing. You don't need a ton of gear. You don't need to be that spinning gear angler that's got 16 boxes hanging off of them. You don't need all that. You need a small box of flies. And I mean, dive into that. The Kankakee really changes throughout the course of the season. And when I say season, it's like mid March and it goes all the way till Christmas time. Um, early in the season, the water's up, it's dirty. You're throwing big flies, that 3 to 5 inch range. Um, because the water's dirty, anything to draw their attention. But then on the flip side, come June, July, August, water drops because of all the vegetation from all the runoff from the farms. That river gets crystal clear. So you can't throw those big flies anymore because the bass know, oh, that's crap. So you have to downsize and go more natural. Your leeches, your sculpins, your crayfish, topwater, of course. So I mean, if you hit those 5 forage categories, you can put a pretty nice little box together and just stick it in your pocket and have a great day.
Yeah. So when you're taking out and guiding, is there any specifics like certain times of season as far as how you're going to target them differently, other than just throwing stuff that your different baits at them that time of year? But is there any kind of like you're looking for different places in the river? Or?
Sure. I mean, in the spring, like I said, the water's up. It's usually dirty. CFS, cubic feet of water a second. That's how any river gauge is rated. That CFS number is going to dictate where the fish are depending on the time of year. The higher water, the higher the CFS. Usually draws them tight to the banks, tighter to structure, hiding out of the current. Say August when the river's at 700 CFS, super low, really clear. Those fish are sitting in the most oxygenated water they could find. A lot of times riffles or lifts above a riffle. That cooler, more oxygenated water. And then in the winter months, October, November, December, those fish have migrated, out of their summer spots and dropped down into those deep winter holes with very little current. So yeah, there's definitely places to look to edge your advantage.
So how do you? How do you get somebody to? I mean, do you ever have a problem having people trying to actually cast and getting the hang of it though, or is it just something that?
No, that's the nice thing. Yes, but by the end of the day, no. There's been a couple instances where communication between, say, me and an initial customer setting up a trip says, "Oh, I want to bring George with." Okay, well, I didn't. It's my fault. I didn't ask the question. Well, can George fly fish? So I just assumed, his buddies fly fishing. I just assumed they both do. So on these occasions, these guys have shown up and pull away from the ramp, get going, and I hand them gear. And George says, "Well, how do I do this?" Well, what do you mean, George? Well, I've never done this before. So at that point, we usually pull over, do a little like 10-minute, just really quick casting lesson. And you've got 8 hours, and in 8 hours, you pick it up pretty quick. Like I said, those contributing factors of not being trout pretty and not needing great distance. I haven't had somebody get on the boat that's never done it, and by the end of the day, still can't do it. They usually get it.
So do you ever target like the trout that they release? No,
No.
you're strictly a smallie kind of guy.
Smallmouth. Every year we get probably a dozen accidental walleye. Um, in my time guiding the Kankakee on the Illinois side, we've pulled 3 or 4 pike, again by accident. But no, it's primarily smallmouth.
Okay. And so when you throw like what kind of weights are you using for your lures when you're doing all the different kind of stuff like that? I mean, you're not using these tiny little like trout flies, right?
Oh no! I mean, for springtime smallmouth, I mean we're throwing big fish patterns like this. And the thing with flies is, yes, you can add weight. A lot of times the eyes are the weight. There's cones you could use. You can wrap lead wire around the hook shank. Um, I've kind of, because I have so much stuff, I've tried to condense my stuff. And I would rather have 4 boxes of flies like this that are unweighted. And fly line technology has come so far that you could fish all the different water columns based on what fly line you're throwing. You have that intermediate stuff that gets you down that 1 to 3 foot, and then you've got the full sinking line that gets you down, depending on grain weight, it gets you down 40 feet. I used to fish lake trout on Lake Michigan in 40 foot of water, and I'd be dredging bottom with flies that were unweighted.
So can you explain that to me? I mean, I don't. I've never really fly fished, so I don't really understand that. But so you used to fish with flies in about 40 feet depth of water.
Sure. Yep.
So how does that work exactly?
There's 3 categories of line. There's floating line.
Okay.
You would fish top water poppers on in July. There's the intermediate line, which I'm fishing right now. The water's up and it's dirty. That gets you, that mid water column. And the longer you let that line in the water, the more time it's going to sink, which brings that fly down deeper. Same principle with full sinking line, which is the last category. And in the fly world, it's rated grain weights. Anything from a 200 grain sinking line to a 450 grain sinking line. 450 sinking grain line is going to sink extremely fast, like almost a foot a second. So you can count that down, based on your water depth. Make the cast, count it down. Okay, I'm 20 feet down. Now I start stripping. Stripping is the action that you're pulling that line to make that fly come to life, whether it's jigging or swimming or twitching or pausing.
So whether or not you move the rod tip and pull the line at the same time would dictate the motion of the fly.
Yep.
And when you do that, I mean, how much line are you pulling back in before you actually reel any in?
You never really reel in per se. You only really, fly anglers only use the reel for, big game species, salmon in Alaska, carp on the Great Lakes, tarpon in saltwater. The normal smallmouth guys only reel in that line up at the end of the day when it's time to go home. A lot of that is, you're stripping that line in or twitching the rod, and the fish comes on and you raise that rod tip, and then you're just strip fighting. You're just pulling them in by hand.
So you pull them in by hand.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So when you pull, okay, so When you set the hook, are you keeping tension on that line, or are you letting them run with that line?
No, keeping tension on that line all the time.
So I mean, it's kind of the same concept, except there's no tension on the actual reel. You're holding the line in your hand and then using the rod action just like you would to set that hook.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. So I still can't. I don't know. It's hard for me to grasp the whole fly fishing thing because in my mind, everything has always been top water casting, and like I said, you see it in a movie or something. You know.
This is the perfect example. This is where the beginner is just starts reading or watching YouTube and is just like, what's going on? And it sounds like a lot, but once you have your mindset, okay, I want to learn, top water game. You just dissect the top water game. There's really a small amount of knowledge that you need to make it happen.
And then, so like, I mean, what are some other things then, as far as like your midwater the column trying to figure out and casting or reeling in? I mean, not reeling, but stripping the line. Is there other things like that you need to, learn, or technique or a concept behind that?
Yeah, and a lot of it is, and I've seen this too. I've had, your stereotypical, just say trout guy. You know that when you're fishing trout, it's just a nice steady strip. That's great, but very few bait fish just come back in a straight line. So over the last 3 or 4 years, I've really not yelled at, not rode my customers, but really tried to instill in them that the more that you can make a fly look real by rod tip twitches like you're fishing a jerk bait, the more you could get that fly to kick and pause and look erratic, the better chances you're going to have.
Okay. So I've seen guys tying flies and different, things like that. What would, I mean, are you buying flies, tying flies? Should somebody make their own or just go buy some and start playing with them?
Until this is what I want to do, just go buy them. The nice advantage, I do not buy flies. I tie flies. I have, I think, 12 or 13 different patterns that I came up with, tested, caught fish that are in production. To get a pattern in production, you send them off to a fly manufacturer and they do their research if you're copied off somebody else. And if they deem you're good and it's legit yours, they'll, you basically get a royalty from it. So I have 13 of those out there. The nice thing about, tying a fly is the same principle as a walleye guy, airbrush and crankbaits. You can really hone into what your local waters need and desire. Color, size, different materials, how you can manipulate them, whether it's, natural fibers or synthetic. Do you want it to absorb water or shed water when it casts? All those things could come into play with fly tying. So you can kind of see back there on that wall. I mean, that's just some of my fly tying material. You can really get carried away with buying fly tying stuff, and that seems overwhelming because you walk in the shop and shop walls are loaded like that, and it's like, well, I only want to tie this one fly. It's overwhelming in the beginning, but after a little bit, it's really cost effective. You buy a fly for, say, $5. If you buy enough material to tie that fly, it might cost you $12, but you're going to be able to tie 3 dozen of them.
That is pretty cost effective. So why you mentioned that the shedding of water versus retaining the water? What purpose would that serve, or why would you want one to do that or the other?
Buoyancy, to give that fly different life. The more water it absorbs, the faster it's going to sink on you. To shed water, it's going to ride higher as that line's going down. It kicks and pauses different ways. There's just little niches. And
so one might be safe to say that sometimes you would combine two materials together, one that sheds and one that retains water, so you could get it to sink and then still have some action?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that fly tying is, that's another thing where there used to be a shop in Countryside, and this is way back. I mean, when I first was getting into it, and the shop owner was great. Throughout the course of the winter season, he would open the shop or keep it open on Thursday nights. Anybody that wanted to come in, hang out, tie fly, learn from somebody else. It was very informal. I used to go every Thursday, and I learned a lot of stuff from these old timers about how to tie flies. And the thing that stuck with me the most is you could watch somebody, you could see a fly in a book, and it could be, this shade yellow thread. Oh, does it really have to be? Or can I throw in some orange in there? You can make a fly your own. Play with it, see what works for you, see what the fish doesn't like, that kind of stuff. That's the neat thing to me in regards to fly tying.
So the basic concept, though, I mean, to the fly is trying to mimic something in nature, right? I mean, like a bait fish or give it color. I mean, is that right? Or what are you trying to do there with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in regards to any type of fishing, guys that are pitching soft plastics, you're trying to, pattern a crayfish or, drop shot and wacky worms, you're worming. Same thing, bait fish, crayfish, anything natural in that fish's habitat per that body of water. Yeah, you try and imitate the best as you can. And I mean, there's certain things that, is a chartreuse bait fish, does that really exist in nature? No, but smallmouth really like it in dirty water.
Yeah, that's true. Or a white zoom minnow or with some sparkle in it. And yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So trying to think of, different scenarios here that it would be applicable. I mean, so like you said, the different times of the year you do different, depths and stuff, and depending on the water, how fast it's going. So like right now with it moving kind of fast, what, I mean, are they going into the creek mouths or what?
No, I haven't pulled a fish out of a creek mouth yet this year. I would say based on the season so far, I'm going to say they're still in their transition from their wintering holes to their spawning grounds. I'm picking up enough bigger bellied fish to say they're eating well. Some are coming out of, known pre-spawn areas, and others are just in random places like, why are you here already?
Okay. So kind of like a feeding ground right now, transition then.
Yeah, I mean, this weather's not doing us any favors. The ups and downs and the non-consistency of water temperatures and flows. It's all over the place. Every day is different.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's I can't believe that Are they really talking snow?
I heard.
I heard a frost, so everybody was panicking about their gardens being in. But yeah, wow. Okay, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't really have any more questions. I'm sure as time goes on, and I try and fly fish. I'll have some more questions for you. But
well, there's an open seat for it if you want to give it a go.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So I guess we can wrap this up. You want to tell people where they can find you and how they can go out with you?
Sure. Internet's the best. I've got a website. It's www.grabyourflycharters.com. My phone number, 630-886-1964. I'm on Instagram and Facebook all over the place. If you just type in my name, Austin Adduci, I should pop up somewhere.
That sounds good. I thank you. And thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're listening to. Also, if you could leave a review, that would help us out. And you can check us out on Instagram, or at publiclychallenged.com. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show.